November 30th, 1941. 12 miles west of Moscow. The night air cuts like a knife. The snow doesn't fall gently. It hammers sideways, driven by wind that bites through wool, leather, and skin alike. Under the faint glow of a flickering lantern, Obergefreiter Karl Wenzel rubs his hands together, his breath clouding the air like smoke. His rifle leans against a frozen fence post, its metal rimmed with ice. The oil has thickened to sludge. The bolt refuses to move. All around him, the once mighty Wehrmacht, 3 million men strong, has become a ghost army. Engines wheeze, horses collapse mid-step, and the rhythmic crunch of boots has been replaced by silence. "Verdammt! It's colder than Russia itself," mutters Sergeant Kruger, stamping his feet beside the dying fire. The thermometer reads 30 deg. A line of half-frozen infantry snakes through the woods toward a shattered village called Krasnaya Poliana, the last outpost before Moscow. Beyond it, in the distance, lies the city the Führer promised would fall before Christmas. But as the snow thickens and the road disappears beneath drifts of white, the men know the truth long before the generals admit it. Somewhere to the rear, a staff car idles weakly beside a cluster of command tents. Inside, General Heinz Guderian studies a map illuminated by a kerosene lamp. His fingers tremble, not from fear, but from the cold. Every red arrow on the map points eastward, straight into the Soviet capital. But those arrows are lies now. The Panzer engines are frozen, the oil solidified. Fuel lines crack like glass. Reports come in from the front. Tanks immobilized near Klin. Infantry halted outside Tula. Frostbite cases doubling daily. The general leans back, exhausted. "We are not fighting the Russians anymore," he mutters quietly to his adjutant. "We are fighting the winter." Outside, the snow swallows the sound of artillery. Men huddle in shallow trenches lined with straw, their uniforms thin and their boots splitting open at the seams. There was never any issue of proper winter clothing. Berlin had insisted the campaign would be over long before the cold came. Now, with Moscow's lights glimmering faintly on the horizon, the army that conquered Europe is dying inch by inch in the dark. The wind howls like a warning from the east. And for the first time since the invasion began, the German generals begin to feel something new: doubt. December 2nd, 1941. Near Klin, northwest of Moscow. Snow drifts higher than the tank treads. The once proud Panzer III squats motionless, its engine block frozen solid, its gun barrel white with frost. Inside, Corporal Dieter Hahn breathes into his cupped hands, staring at the frost forming on the periscope glass. "She won't even start," his driver mutters. "Oil's turned to tar." They had reached within sight of the Moscow rail line, their final objective before the capital. But the weather struck faster than any Soviet counterattack. The cold killed faster than bullets. Machine guns jammed. Mortar shells cracked open like eggs before firing. Across the line, Soviet soldiers, wrapped in felt boots, padded coats, and layers of wool, move like phantoms through the snow. They are in their element. For the Red Army, this is home. At a forward command post, General Hermann Hoth watches through binoculars as his exhausted men retreat from the outskirts of Istra. "The roads have vanished," an aide reports. "We can't even tell where our front begins." Hoth lowers the glasses slowly. "Tell headquarters, the attack cannot continue." But headquarters refuses to hear. In Smolensk, hundreds of miles behind the line, Hitler sits in a heated villa, poring over maps spread across a massive oak table. He points to the line encircling Moscow and snarls, "One final push and the city will fall. There is no winter that can stop the German soldier." He has never seen a man's eyelids freeze shut. He has never felt fingers blacken inside a glove. Back outside clean, Private Wenzel and his squad scavenge through an abandoned Soviet supply dump. They find a crate of winter coats, Russian issue, coarse and heavy. "Take them," their lieutenant says quietly, glancing over his shoulder. "If the Feld gendarmerie sees you wearing those, you'll be shot. But without them, you'll freeze by morning." The irony isn't lost on them. The army that conquered Europe now depends on the very enemy it sought to destroy, for warmth, for survival. By dusk, the sky turns violet, and the snow begins again, heavier than before. Somewhere in the blizzard, engines sputter out one by one. The front collapses into silence. The men whisper that Moscow is close enough to see, but no one believes they'll ever reach it now. The realization spreads like frost, quiet, creeping, unstoppable. Operation Barbarossa is no longer an advance. It's a burial. December 5th, 1941. The outskirts of Moscow. The dawn is pale blue and brittle with cold. On the horizon, faint black dots move against the snow, at first mistaken for retreating refugees. But the sound that follows is not weeping. It's the thunder of artillery. The Red Army has returned. Soviet Katyusha rockets streak across the frozen landscape, their shrill whine cutting through the stillness. Moments later, the earth erupts, white snow turning black with soot and flame. For German soldiers who have endured weeks of paralysis, the shock is total. General Georgy Zhukov has unleashed the winter counteroffensive. Behind him stand fresh Siberian divisions, troops hardened by years of life in sub-zero temperatures, dressed in fur-lined coats, equipped with skis and white camouflage. Many have been transferred secretly from the Far East. Freed up after Soviet intelligence confirmed Japan would not attack from Manchuria. Now they descend upon the exhausted Germans like an avalanche. At a frozen crossroad near Narofominsk, the 258th Infantry Division attempts to hold the line. "Hold your fire until they're close," a lieutenant shouts, his voice muffled by the storm. But his men can barely feel their fingers on the triggers. Their machine guns rattle once, then jam. Across the field, Red Army infantry advance through the smoke, bayonets gleaming. A Soviet T-34 bursts through the trees, its wide tracks crushing frozen corpses beneath it. The tank's armor shrugs off rifle fire like pebbles. Private Wenzel dives into a shell hole, firing blindly. "Where are our panzers?" someone screams. There are no panzers left. Most sit abandoned in snowbanks, frozen solid or out of fuel. In a command dugout several miles back, Guderian listens to the reports. His face is gray, his breath shallow. The counterattack has come on every front, north, south, and center. Moscow will not fall. "We must withdraw," he says at last, his voice barely above a whisper. But the order from Hitler's headquarters arrives minutes later. No retreat, not one step backward. Guderian closes his eyes. He knows what that means. It's no longer a campaign. It's a death sentence. Outside, night falls early. The temperature plummets below 40 degrees C. Soldiers burn fence posts and furniture to survive the dark. Frostbite eats through boots. Horses freeze where they stand. Some men, delirious from cold, wander into the snow and never return. And yet, from Moscow, the Red Army keeps coming. Relentless, endless, like the winter itself. The German front bends, then breaks. Villages captured in summer are lost in a single week. The once proud Wehrmacht, that unstoppable juggernaut, now retreats through the same roads it conquered, leaving behind tanks, guns, and the dead. The myth of invincibility dies there, buried beneath 6 feet of snow. December 20th, 1941. Vyazma Front, west of Moscow. The road is a graveyard of machines. Abandoned trucks, their canvas tops shredded by wind, stand half buried in snow. Inside one, a radio crackles weakly, then dies. The Wehrmacht's iron spearhead has rusted into silence. Lieutenant Franz Müller trudges along the icy road, his greatcoat stiff as armor. His platoon is down to 12 men. Frostbite has claimed more soldiers than Soviet bullets. He passes a signpost barely visible through the snow. Smolensk, 230 kilometers. That's all they want now, to reach it alive. He glances at his men, hollow-eyed, wrapped in stolen Russian coats, rifles slung like relics. The youngest, barely 18, carries a Mauser frozen solid. When the wind cuts through the tree line, it sounds like screaming. Behind them, Moscow is safe. The first major German objective the Blitzkrieg has failed to take. Ahead lies only retreat and the endless white void of winter. At an improvised command post outside Vyazma, Field Marshal Günther von Klug dictates a report for OKH headquarters. The troops are at their limit, ammunition short, no fuel, morale low. Without withdrawal, the entire Army Group Center may collapse. His aide, shaking from the cold, adds, "Shall I send it in clear text? Herr Feldmarschall?" Von Kluge hesitates. He knows how the Führer will respond. Still, he nods. "Send it." Hours later, the reply arrives, relayed through the frozen radio line. "Stand fast, no retreat. Victory demands endurance." The words hit harder than artillery. Across the front, the cost of that order becomes visible. Thousands die where they stand. Frost-bitten soldiers are left behind when vehicles fail. Medics run out of morphine and use snow to numb the dying. By Christmas, the temperature plunges to 45 degrees Celsius. The oil in German weapons solidifies into wax. Horses are slaughtered for food. Soldiers burn entire wooden churches just to survive the night. In Moscow, Stalin celebrates the first good news of the war. The Red Army has not only held the capital, it has driven the Germans back. On December 22nd, the Kremlin bells ring for the first time since June. Soviet propaganda calls it the miracle of Moscow. But for the German generals, there is no miracle, only reckoning. In a railway carriage outside Orsha, Guderian meets with his staff. His voice is hoarse. "We've lost half our tanks, a quarter of our men. This is not a pause. It's the end of Barbarossa." He knows the truth no one dares to tell Hitler. The dream of crushing the Soviet Union in one campaign has died in the snow outside Moscow. When Guderian finally orders a limited withdrawal against Hitler's direct command, he does so quietly, without fanfare. The columns pull back under cover of darkness, engines muffled, headlights blacked out. The men march westward, their breath fogging the night. Each step away from Moscow feels like an admission, not of defeat, but of survival. By January 1942, the remnants of the once invincible army stagger into defensive lines hundreds of kilometers back. The frozen corpses of those who didn't make it mark the trail like milestones. Operation Barbarossa, the greatest invasion in history, has failed. The snow keeps falling, silent and endless, erasing everything. Footprints, trenches, even the memory of triumph. The world has changed, and the German generals finally understand it. The war they thought would last months has become something else, a struggle of years, of attrition, of annihilation. The Eastern Front will now consume millions, but its fate was sealed here, in the winter of 1941, when the cold defeated an empire.